And we are live. Hello, this is Ruben from Dubb's podcast Connection Loop. And today I have Joel Block with me. We are going to talk about the most essential business trends for 2021 and beyond. We're so honored to have Joel on the show. Joel, if you could start with a short bio and let's get into the topic.
Well, I first of all, thanks for having me. Nice to be here. I started in the CPA business. I wasn't really cut out for it. And then I kind of went on, built a company. I sold that company after I raised a whole bunch of money for it, and then have been buying and selling companies ever since. So I run a hedge fund. I've been in venture capital, funding other companies, and really just I've been in the business of doing deals really for most of my career. I find companies, I bet on them, and that's it. And by the way, some people think I'm a professional gambler, and funny enough, I started as a professional blackjack player. So I used to play cards.
Okay. So when venture capitalists say that they're placing bets, it's not untrue a lot of the time.
It's not. And the bottom line is that you're betting on a company to be successful. Now, they're probably not just throwing their money into the wind. I mean, they've got a little bit of inside track here on some stuff, but yeah, they're making legitimate bets, and the bets don't always pay off.
Right. It just takes that one out of 100.
Well, if it's your business, it takes more than one, because you got investors, you got to pay them back. And, right. So it seems like if an individual could hit it one time and make, a lot, but for a business, it's got to keep going,
it's got to be repeated.
Yeah. The better ones are hitting 2 out of 10. The other ones, 1 out of 10 or less.
Nice. So, business trends for 2021. I think that there's a lot of really interesting topics here centered around sustainability, financial sustainability, and also just efficiency of capital, of resources. Could you kind of take us through some of the trends that you are seeing?
Well, let's talk about the biggest one of all, which is a new one, just really in the last, year, only because of the pandemic, is work from home. Work from home has changed so much for so many people. And so we kind of have to start with that one. You okay with that?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. So, imagine, we're starting to open up now and people are going to start going back to work. And I don't know how many people exactly are going to go back into the office, but, it's kind of looking like some companies are going to go back 100%. Some companies are not going to go back at all. More or less, it's probably going to be 50-50 where people are going to maybe go on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Most people don't want to be home full time. They want to go in and get some socializing, especially younger people like to socialize. They see other people. Older people, they tend to have responsibilities. So working from home works great for them. And so, it's probably going to be a 50-50 kind of arrangement. So let's say it's 50-50. Let's think about the impact of 50% of the people working at home and 50% of the people going downtown.
Yeah.
First thing is you get in your car in the morning and you drive to work. Theoretically, there should be less cars on the freeway. That's not true in Los Angeles just quite yet, but hopefully we'll start to see a reduction in cars. It's kind of back to where it was before the pandemic. But let's think about this. So let's say that there's half as many cars because half as many people are going to work on their busy day. What that means is that half as many speeding tickets, half as many parking tickets, half as many sales tax for parking lot owners. So cities and governments stand to lose greatly. And so I always ask two questions. One is what's the impact? And two is who wins, who loses? And so, when I look at that, to me, the loser are these governments, and they're going to have to think about new ways to generate revenue. And if you look, they're already starting to find new ways. They're thinking about taxing cryptocurrency. They recently implemented a tax at LAX, $10 for every car that comes into the airport or something. That's what my service told me that they have to pay. So everybody's starting to think, holy cow, our revenue streams have been disrupted. Everything has been disrupted by the pandemic. It's not just work from home. It's all sorts of systems, and we need to be prepared for that. And we could go on and on with this as deep as you want.
Yeah, I agree. I tend to agree with this philosophy, generally speaking. I mean, there's a certain efficiency that happens when we work from home, assuming that we have our things sorted out at home with our kids and our pets and whatnot. There are definitely some benefits. I mean, I have noticed a number of companies reporting that their productivity has skyrocketed because of the work from home effort. Why? Because people probably work more. They spend less time getting ready and doing their hair and, getting ready. I could be wearing pajamas from the waist down right now. It doesn't take me a lot of time to get ready. So I tend to agree that is a good thing. My question for you is, what is the technology that we are going to need to consume to make this more appropriate, to make it so that employers, this is the death of the micromanager, that micromanager that loves to breathe down someone's neck and just watch them work. This is the death of them, because how do you do that in a virtual world? It's different. You can have messaging on Slack, you can overmeet in Zoom, but at the same time, how is it going to look technologically speaking?
Let's think about that for a second. So this micromanagement is a good point you bring up. Some people will just not be able to adapt to this new approach.
Yes.
So companies, let's say the owner of the company is the micromanager. That company will say everybody's got to come in, and then people are going to say, well, I don't want to come in to that job, and I'm going to get a different job. And think about what's going to happen. Think about the employment changes. If you can work from anywhere, and we got to go through a couple scenarios here first, but let's look at the real estate impact. If 50% of the people are now working from home, they're probably going to need a little more real estate. They need maybe an office, maybe they want a gym, maybe they need a room for grandma, or for somebody who lives with them that they care for. You have all these different situations, and because of those reasons, people now are starting to think about moving not just to the suburbs. You can't get a 6, 7, 8 bedroom house in most suburbs. Unless you're talking about a giant house. But, if you move to rural areas where you go further away, really further away, you can buy a really big house for a song, certainly much less than you're going to sell your suburban or urban house for. And that gives you a lot of options. But those people now that are living, let's say 100 miles away and can't come in the office anymore, let's say you're the best advertising salesperson going, but you don't live, near New York City. Well, maybe it doesn't matter anymore that you don't live near New York City. Maybe you can be on a new team and be remote. So it opens the door for recruiting to happen in all different kinds of places. And so the real estate impacts the way that employment happens. And companies where you have micromanagers that don't adapt to this new way of working are going to get wiped out. Those people are going to go the way of the horse and buggy, and that's just kind of how it is. And if you stop and think about it, there are a lot of institutions that are breaking down. They're old institutions, and they're ripe for change. And so, for example, our penal system, the way we punish people, it's a really vengeful system. We just want people to suffer when we get mad at them, and I get that. The bail system is an 800-year-old system, and maybe it's not working that great anymore. The way we educate children, lining them up in rows and kind of teaching them to really kind of preparing them to be factory workers on an assembly line. The idea of a 40-hour work week when everybody has to work in a certain building, and so that the person next to me takes the thing I worked on and does the next step. And of course, in that world, you have to work together. But, knowledge workers, and most of us are information and knowledge workers. For those of us that are doing knowledge work, we can work in different environments, which is called asynchronously. We can work in different places at different times, and it really doesn't matter. So does the 40-hour work week still make sense? Not really. It doesn't make sense at all. Now, do there need to be some hours when people can get a hold of each other? Yeah, there do. There do have to be that sort of thing. But the rules are all changing, and institutions are breaking, and we all need to rethink some things. And people that aren't willing to do that are going down.
Well, let me ask you this: based on that assumption, which I agree with, why is the real estate market in large cities going wild right now? In LA, my wife's a real estate agent, so I hear about this a lot. In LA, there are multiple bid options, prices that are going way more than what the listing price was. Yes, a lot of this has to do with interest rates. There's no doubt about that. But there's still an inherent demand to be in these major populous. where, X percent of our workforce now can actually go and move to, some town in Texas, or,
Well, so
just up to five.
understand, California has caused a lot of problems for the rest of the country. So, Las Vegas was one of the first. People
Yeah.
would leave here with a bag full of money, go to Las Vegas where the properties were very cheap. And now they're not cheap anymore because Californians have come in and have changed their economy. And that's now happening in Idaho, Washington State, Oregon. It's happening all over the West Coast and around, even in Texas, because a lot of Californians are moving to Texas. So lots of things are happening. But why is the prices going up? There are many reasons. One, interest rates are low, but they've been low. So that's not the reason that it's happening all of a sudden. I think in urban areas, and I think that especially in a place like Los Angeles, a couple things are happening. And I think that one of it is that the politics are so divisive and they're so bad. The homelessness problem is so bad in some of these cities that people are escaping these cities. So partly you had urban to suburban and suburban to rural. You had that phenomenon. But you also just have a lot of people that want to get out from wherever they are so their kids can go to different, better schools. In the 70s, it was white flight. It was a race thing. It's not a race thing anymore. Now it's people want to get away from cities that allow camping on public grounds. I mean, it's just, and it's filthy and it's dangerous and it's not good for the homeless people. It's not good for the citizens who live anywhere nearby. So it's a bad situation for everyone. And governments have done a poor job of addressing it. And the people that have the money move out. And if they got to pay a little extra, so be it. But they want to move to areas that are safer and better for their children, that don't have these problems. And suburban areas tend not to have these problems the same way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like the luckiest guy on the planet when I can take my bike to my country club, when I can take it to my kids after school program, when I can take it to, and I feel safe. I feel very privileged to have that experience. Whereas in some other towns where real estate's extremely expensive, in fact, maybe 10 times more expensive than it is in the rural areas, where they don't have that necessarily that peace or that security. So it's definitely a paradox, but I agree with you. Now, one of the other topics that you mentioned was this Uberization of resources, where we don't fully consume something if we don't need it. So I've seen a lot of marketing happening, for example, for shared CFOs. Love to get your take on that.
That's kind of the shared CFOs is sort of an example of that. I mean, you run a software as a service business. That's sort of an example of that, where you partition or you fractionalize a server and let lots of people take advantage of it and you handle it for them. That's kind of an offshoot of it. What I really, let's think about what Uber did. Uber, replacing taxis, and we all understand that part, but think about what they really did. So you've got a car that sits on your driveway, and the car companies, 75 years ago, started thinking about how are we going to sell more cars. And, I don't know, 50 years ago, they come up with the idea of leases. And they say you can only drive your car 12,000 miles a year under the lease. Otherwise, you got to pay extra. And here's how much it costs for you to have this car. Well, if you drive 60 miles an hour for, I don't know, for 16 hours, that's, what is that? That's about 1,000 miles a month. And so 16 hours is about 1,000 miles. That's about 5% of your day. So that car is only available to you for 5% of your day, including nighttime. I mean, it's not available to you very much in order for you to stay compliant with the rules and stay inside the lease terms. So, they've convinced us that 5% is an okay utilization of our automobile. But automobiles are, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, 75, 100. I mean, there are cars that I'm not even talking about fancy cars. I mean, just regular old cars go up to 90 or 100,000. If you have got a big family, I mean, that's a lot of dough. And when you stop and think about 5%, people are saying that's kind of a bad deal. It's kind of a bad deal. So what is a better deal? A better deal would be to have one person who makes a business out of using their car 60%, and I don't have any car, and I just pay them to use part of their car because that's the business they're in, and they focus on doing that business. And so Uber was very smart. It was smart because they got people who use their car 5% to be able to make money from it. People who use their car 5% like me to use my car even less and maybe even not need any car, or just have let's say a family of 4 or 5 cars can reduce down to 3 cars or whatever it is. And so it changes. So companies need to think about the same things. Do we have a conference room that we're not using more than an hour a day that we could maybe rent out? Do we have machinery that we could, lease out to other companies or rent on a short-term basis to other companies that need to use it? Do we have facilities of any kind? There are people who have swimming pools that will allow sharing, or they'll have a backyard. They'll let other neighborhood dogs come over and use their playground or their backyard or whatever if you don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
There are all kinds of these things popping up, and it's clearly a business trend. And I just call it asset Uberization. But even shared server services like what you do is very much a concept of why would I buy the service and build it if you can do a better job of it than me? I mean, it's all you think about all day long. I'm sure you're pretty good at it by now. It's all you think about. Me, I haven't thought about it at all, and I wouldn't even know where to start. So it doesn't make any sense. So that's kind of the concept of asset Uberization. And it's important. So if you come across something that you have extra of that people need, that's an opportunity for you to, make a business decision.
Yeah. And, one of the other things that I think about is sometimes there are repercussions when you share assets. Thinking of sharing my car with someone like through Turo, that app sharing site when you can rent your car to anyone around you that wants to rent the car. I think to myself, if someone's going to rent my car and take it, what can they do to my vehicle? Are they going to bring it back? Is it going to be damaged? Is it going to smell like cigarettes? Are the tires going to be messed up? Whereas other types of things, which may be more kind of futuristic or technological, you don't have to deal with any sacrifices, like a shared server. A shared server is an intelligent machine that is deploying bandwidth and resources and assets based on usage. So a lot of people that buy domains or have servers, they don't get traffic, and others, they have more. There are intelligent, load balancing and auto expansion for servers that can accommodate that, where there's really no downside. All that you experience is the upside, the cost savings.
Yeah, I don't think that I don't think the car example is I wouldn't endorse that one either. I don't think it's the best thing. I don't know how the insurance works. If there's somebody got injured and whose car is it really? I mean, ultimately it's. So I think there's that model is kind of a bad model, but I think Uber did a good job with it, where they divided up the car. They got one person uses 60%, and that makes it possible for other people to do something different. Listen, just because it's a good idea doesn't mean that the business model that implements it's going to be a great idea. So you have to kind of make sure you get both of them correct. But there are lots of examples of this, that we just talked about, and it's something for people to pay attention to because it's a way for their business to save money. Capital preservation is important. Cost containment is important. Companies are trying to make up for lost time because of the pandemic, and these are all great ways for them to do that.
Yeah. Another question that I have for you is this idea of chasing capital. So, a lot of entrepreneurs kind of find themselves in this loop of having to constantly chase money so that they can build what they want and sell it and go pay their investors back one day. And it's this chicken and the egg problem where I can't build it unless I have capital, and so on and so forth. One of the trends that I'm noticing is that now with easy tech, with all sorts of methods of selling, whether it's sending one-to-one videos like this or whether it's just general streamlining of communication, people can sell now a lot easier. And as a result, you can actually drive revenue prior to raising money and kind of avoid that capital chase problem. What are some of the trends that you are noticing for entrepreneurs, for startup folks that are able to sell and then maybe potentially delay the fundraise so that they can have more leverage?
You got to be very careful with these things. The government has really strict rules about how this sort of thing works. So, for example, when you buy something on Amazon, if you give them your credit card, they don't charge your credit card the minute that you hit go. They don't charge your credit card until they ship the product. So it has to actually physically leave their building before they can take the money. There's a trade because the government doesn't want consumers to take a risk. I run a fund, a hedge fund. So investors give me money and then I go buy things with it. Those investors deliberately take a risk, and they don't just take a risk randomly. We gave them documents that explain the risks very carefully. We tell them all the things that we're going to be doing with their money and all the things that go wrong, some things that go right, but we tell them as much as we can. And so, that's a risk business. The government doesn't like it very much, but they understand that there are people who want to make those kind of investments, and they allow it. But let's say that you're a regular consumer, and I'm going to get back to your question about, pre-selling and some other things. Let's say you go to the supermarket and you buy a bag of groceries. You give the clerk the money. The clerk gives you the bag. Transaction's over. Wash your hands. Move on, and you're done. Nobody took any risk, and everything went great. But let's say, for example, that you pre-sell, some services. You say to somebody, "Hey, look, we're going to be building this new thing. Give us some money, and in 6 months we'll have the computers built, and everything will be great, and then we'll start doing it." Well, if it turns out that you are unable to deliver those services, those people would have a claim to get their money back, and that's exactly what you don't want, because they're not investors. Those people are not taking any risk, and that's why Kickstarter, did a great job. Is that they made it possible for you to donate and get a reward if you if you are successful in building the product correctly the way that you promised that you would. And if you're not successful, then hey, they made a donation, and that's it. That's not permission to steal the money and to be flagrantly terrible. I mean, that's not what that's about. But if you make a good effort and it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. So you really want to be very careful and not find yourself in a situation where you have tricked people, or even inadvertently or not deliberately. You cannot get people to take a risk that they don't understand, or you could find yourself in trouble. So I just put that caution out there to be very careful. Every entrepreneur thinks about that. There's got to be a better way than equity capital, because equity capital, it's painful, it's expensive, it's complicated, it's all sorts of things that they don't like. But the government has done this on purpose, because most people don't know how to protect themselves, and so they have to make sure that you're doing a good job to protect people.
Yeah, I think as a software company, I think we're very fortunate, because we've really made an effort to build a community around what we're building. And, we're very transparent with our roadmap. We tell people what we have, and we tell people what we're building. And, by having people buy into our brand, into our customer service, into all the robust features that we currently have, people understand that it's an evolution, and that, with a little bit of patience, we can build tech that.
Well, I mean, listen, what you're describing is that there's a baseline and you're adding features.
Yeah.
At least there. Okay, look, here's what it is. For $20 or $50, you get the baseline, and hopefully in a month or two, we're going to have more things and more things and more things, and then maybe the price will go up a little bit, and we'll add more things and more things. And they understand the risk. They're understanding it, but that's different from what a lot of other entrepreneurs try to do and say, which is what Kickstarter specializes in. Give us the money now, and we'll mail you the product when it's ready.
Yeah.
The Kickstarter way is the right way to do it.
Correct.
Short of that, your situation is quite different, because people aren't giving you money for nothing.
Right.
They may not get the best product that you're ever going to deliver. In fact, one of the things that I always like to say is that this is the worst that this product is ever going to be. It's only going to get better in the future.
Right.
And so that's kind of what you're describing, is the scenario of that this is the worst it's ever going to be. Here's the price. And people go, that's not too bad of a price. Okay, fine. They give you the money, and then you do more and more. That's a good company that does what you're describing, that you're adding more and more services, more and more features, and making it better and better. So,
yeah, well said. Well said. Now, you wrote a book. Talk to me about that book.
Stop Hustling Gigs.
In fact, is that a poster that I see right behind you?
It is. Stop hustling gigs and start building a business. I've been in the venture capital and the hedge fund business for 30 years. I've been inside of 1,000 companies. I've done dozens of deals where I've invested in companies and been involved in companies, set companies up, and so forth. And in fact, I actually run a mastermind of other hedge fund managers. I mean, so we're involved in talking about some pretty complicated stuff, and going inside lots of companies. There are some companies that really do things in a good way. I mean, they really do a good job. And I just kind of had this idea a long time ago that I really need to start documenting some of the things that I've learned in my career for my children. I really need to start writing it down, all the things that I learned in different companies, and the way that I negotiate, and the way that I think about selling, and all the other things that I like to do. So what I did is I just made a list of it turns out to be about 110 things that, that I learned along the way. And it's a very easy read. I mean, the book is, it's 110 pages, 120 pages, or 140 pages, very short book. The chapters are a couple pages each, but they read quick. But if you could master one every so often, it would be a home run for you. And most people, when they read this book, they understand why they're not making any money. They understand why things that they're doing are not working for them, and how they could do them better. And it's 110 just great ideas that I've either developed myself, attitudes I've gotten myself, or things I've learned inside of other companies.
Fabulous. And folks can find that on Amazon, and I'm assuming any kind of place where you can buy books.
Yeah, I think Amazon might be the main place.
Great. And then where can folks connect with you? LinkedIn, social channels?
Yeah, listen, I've got a very large following on all the social media platforms, and joelblock.com is probably the best place.
Amazing. Well, Joel, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you on LinkedIn.
Hey, well, listen, man, thank you very much. Appreciate having the time to visit, and we'll stay in touch.
Thanks so much.